40 years. That is 14,600 days of wandering the desert after escaping slavery in Egypt. Finally, the promised land, the place of our dreams, is just across that river. But a massive problem has emerged. Moses, the leader who stood like a giant pillar for the people, is gone. Before us, the river waters are flooding, swirling in terrifying whirlpools. Fear begins to creep back into the eyes of the people. Can we really cross this river and survive? This is the story of a single step of courage that sparked one of the most breathtaking miracles in human history. Today, I invite you into the heart of that moment, where the rushing waters of the Jordan finally stand still. The time of the wilderness is truly coming to an end. The people of Israel are standing right at the edge of the Jordan River. Look across the water. Do you see it? Bathed in the golden sunlight is the land of Canaan, the land God promised hundreds of years ago. It's so close now. You could almost reach out and touch it, but the mood in the camp is heavy. Instead of joy, there is a strange tension, a haunting silence. Why? Because Moses, the leader they relied on like a god for 40 years, is no longer with them. People look at his empty tent, and a dark shadow of doubt falls over their hearts. What do we do now? They whisper, "Without Moses, how can we cross this river and survive in a land of giants? Who will lead us? Who will speak for God now?" In that exact moment of despair, God calls out to one man. His name is Joshua. Since his youth, Joshua had been like Moses' shadow. He was the brave warrior who risked his life at the Battle of Rephidim. Most importantly, 40 years ago, when everyone else said, "We can't," he was the one who shouted, "If God is with us, we can win." God speaks to Joshua in a deep, resonant voice. Joshua steadies his beating heart and listens. "My servant Moses is dead." God states the reality plainly. The era of Moses has ended, but the next words are like a clap of thunder to Joshua's soul. Now then, you and all these people, get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them. Joshua's heart begins to pound. As he wonders if he could ever truly step into Moses' shoes, God gives him a firm, unshakable promise. "As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you." This promise strengthens Joshua's trembling knees. God says it 3 times. Be strong and courageous. Be very strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. The moment those words sink into Joshua's heart, his gaze changes. He is no longer just an assistant. He has been reborn as a lion, ready to lead a new generation. Joshua walks out and shouts to the people, "Prepare yourselves. We are going to cross the Jordan." The people are stunned. Really? How can this many people cross such a deep river right now? Without a second of hesitation, Joshua answers, "Yes, God is with us, and He will do amazing things. Consecrate yourselves and get ready." Wave after wave of excitement and tension flows through the camp. Joshua calls the leaders of the tribes. Tell the people to pack their bags and prepare food. Within 3 days, we cross that river. The camp becomes a beehive of activity. They pack up the tents they've lived in for 40 years, gather their livestock, and hold their children's hands. On their last night in the wilderness, they listen to the sound of the river. Hearts racing with anticipation. Morning breaks on the day of promise. The sun rises and the Jordan River looms ahead. But there's a major problem. It's harvest season, and the melting snow from the mountains has caused the river to overflow its banks. The water is a terrifying, swirling mess of brown mud. The elders turn pale. "This is suicide," they mutter. "No boats, no bridges. How can we possibly cross?" Then Joshua announces God's special plan: priests. Take up the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of God's presence, and walk out ahead of the people. The gold-covered ark shines on the shoulders of the priests. Joshua tells the people, "Tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Just follow the ark." The priests begin to walk slowly toward the bank. 1 step, 2 steps. The roar of the water grows louder. The waves lap at their feet. The people hold their breath. Are they really just going to walk into the water? The very moment the priest's feet touch the water's edge, a miracle occurs that history will never forget. The rushing water stops, as if blocked by an invisible wall. The water flowing down from upstream piles up in a heap far away, while the water flowing down to the Dead Sea completely drains away. In an instant, the riverbed is revealed. But here is the amazing part. The ground wasn't a muddy mess. It was dry land, perfect for walking. The people scream in wonder. A path? There's a path in the middle of the river. The priests stand firm with the ark in the middle of the river, at its deepest point. God promised that as long as they stood there, the water would not return. Joshua shouts, "Now!" Everyone cross the river without delay. A massive procession begins to move. From little children holding their grandfather's hands to young men driving livestock, everyone passes through that miraculous path. As they walk, they feel the thrill of seeing the walls of water standing tall on either side. It's true. God really made a way. The God of Moses is with Joshua too. Until every single person and every last animal had stepped onto the other side, the priests did not move. When the last person was safe on dry land, Joshua commanded, "Come up out of the river." The moment the priests stepped onto the bank, the dam of water burst. The Jordan River returned to its powerful, swirling self, as if nothing had ever happened. The people stood in awe. And then a roar of triumph erupted, a shout that washed away 40 years of pain. We made it. We have finally set foot in the Promised Land. Children run through the flowering fields of Canaan, and people embrace with tears of joy. Joshua watches silently, offering a prayer of thanks. The people now knew deep in their souls, God is with Joshua. We can win. But friends, the joy is only the beginning. Crossing the river didn't mean the work was done. Ahead of them lies a massive, impregnable fortress called Jericho, looming with terrifying strength. How can these people with no weapons and no military training bring down those high walls? God has a second miracle prepared, one that defies all imagination. A story of bringing down a city not with swords or spears, but with silence and a shout. Next time, Joshua Part 2, The Walls of Jericho Fall. The story continues. After crossing the Jordan River through a staggering miracle, the people of Israel finally stood on the soil of the Promised Land. But their celebration was short-lived. Standing directly in their path was a monster made of stone and bronze, the city of Jericho. It was known as the most fortified stronghold in human history, an impregnable fortress. Its walls were so massive, so thick and high, that 2 chariots could race side by side along the top of them. Its gates were now bolted shut with heavy bars of iron. How could a group of former slaves break through these massive walls with just swords and spears? Today, we explore a strategy that completely defied human logic. A bizarre, silent march that ended in a single, earth-shaking shout. I invite you to the very front lines of a moment that sent chills through the ancient world, the day the mighty walls of Jericho crumbled like a house of cards. The people of Israel stood in the long shadow of Jericho's great barrier. This was the gateway to Canaan, a fortress that boasted the strongest defenses in the region. But inside those walls, the people of Jericho were already paralyzed with a haunting fear. They had heard the rumors of Israel's God, how he dried up the sea and crushed powerful kings. They locked their gates tight, maintaining a level of security so strict that not even an ant could slip through. No one went out and no one came in. Joshua, the new leader of Israel, was a man of action, but also a man of deep caution. Instead of a reckless, headlong attack, he chose to brave spies to scout the city in secret. "Go, look over the land," he told them. "Find a way in. See if their hearts are truly as strong as their walls." Under the cover of a moonless night, the two spies slipped past the outer perimeter and into the city. They found refuge in a house built right into the city wall, the home of a woman named Rahab. It was a strategic choice. A house on the wall offered an exit if things went wrong. But danger arrived almost immediately. Someone had spotted them. The king of Jericho received a report. "Look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land." The king's soldiers came pounding on Rahab's door, their torches flickering in the dark. "Bring out the men who came to you," they demanded. "They are spies." In that heart-stopping moment, Rahab made a choice that would change the course of history. She didn't turn them in. Instead, she risked her life. She led the spies to the roof and hid them under stalks of flax that were laid out to dry. Then she walked down and calmly misled the soldiers. "Yes, some men were here," she said without a tremor in her voice. "But I didn't know where they came from. They left at dark when the gate was about to close. If you hurry, you can catch them." The soldiers fell for the ruse and raced toward the Jordan. Once the city was quiet, Rahab went up to the roof. She spoke to the spies with a trembling, honest voice. "I know that the Lord has given this land to you," she confessed. "A great fear of you has fallen on us. Our hearts melted when we heard how your Lord stopped the waters. Your God is the God of heaven above and the earth below." She made one desperate plea. "I have shown you kindness. Now swear to me that you will spare my family when the city falls. Give me a sign that you will keep us alive." The spies, moved by her incredible faith, made a sacred promise. "Our lives for your lives. Tie this scarlet cord in your window. Everyone inside the house with that cord will be safe. But if anyone steps outside the door, their blood will be on their own head." With Rahab's help, the spies lowered themselves down the wall using a scarlet rope. When they finally returned to Joshua, their report was one of spiritual certainty. "The Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands. All the people are melting in fear because of us." Finally, the day of the attack arrived. The camp was buzzing. Thousands of people expected a traditional battle plan. Would they build massive ladders? Would they use battering rams? But the strategy God gave Joshua was unlike anything ever heard of in the history of warfare. It sounded like madness. "March around the city once a day with all the armed men," God commanded. "Do this for 6 days. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times. And then came the hardest command of all. While you march, do not say a word. No talking, no whispering. Total silence. Only the sound of the footsteps and the trumpets shall be heard." The first day of the march began. It was a haunting sight. At the front were the armed guards, followed by 7 priests blowing ram's horns. Behind them was the golden Ark of the Covenant, and then the vast army of Israel. Thousands of feet shook the ground like a slow, rhythmic drum. But not a single person opened their mouth. On top of Jericho's walls, the soldiers watched in a terrifying silence. At first, they were paralyzed. What kind of sorcery is this? They wondered. But as day after day passed and the Israelites just kept walking, the fear turned into mockery. The people of Jericho began to laugh. "Hey, is this a parade?" They shouted. "Are you trying to bore our walls down? Say something. Are you all cowards?" The insults must have stung. The Israelites probably felt their blood boil, wanting to shout back. But they kept their mouths shut. This wasn't a weak silence. It was a holy silence. It was a battle to quiet their own doubts and focus every sense on what God was about to do. 3 days, 4 days, 5. As the march repeated, a strange spiritual tension built up. The atmosphere became heavy. For the people inside Jericho, the mockery died down and turned back into a suffocating pressure. The silence of Israel was louder than any war cry. They felt as if a giant hand was slowly tightening around the city. Then came the 7th day. The people rose at the first light of dawn. This was a day of decision. They circled the city again, and again, and again. 1 lap, 2 laps, 3. The sun rose high. The tension was now at a breaking point. The footsteps grew heavier, a rhythmic thud that vibrated the very stones of the wall. On the 7th lap, the march stopped. A sudden, absolute silence fell over the valley. The priests took a deep breath and blew a long, magnificent blast on the ram's horns. As the sound echoed through the mountains, Joshua unleashed a command from the depths of his soul. Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. In that moment, the shout of hundreds of thousands of people, a shout held back for 40 years, burst forth all at once. It was an explosion of faith that shook the foundations of the earth. The ground buckled. Crumble, crash. The double walls began to collapse from the inside out, as if stepped on by an invisible giant. Dust clouds filled the sky, turning day into night. The fortress became a flat pile of rubble, creating a ramp for the Israelite soldiers to charge straight in. Through the chaos and the thick dust, one miracle stood out. A single section of the wall remained standing. It was the house of Rahab, with the scarlet cord still hanging from the window. God kept his promise. Rahab and her family were saved without a hair on their heads being touched. The victory was complete. Israel had conquered the strongest city in Canaan without a single battering ram an eye through obedience, silence, and a shout. They learned that when God speaks, the laws of physics itself will bend to his will. But, friends, the joy of victory is a dangerous thing. In the hearts of the people, a deadly weed began to grow. Pride. They forgot who had really knocked the walls down. We are unstoppable, they thought. If we beat Jericho, that tiny little town of Ai will be a piece of cake. Even Joshua let his guard down. He didn't ask God for a plan this time. He sent only a small group to attack Ai, expecting an easy win. But the result was disastrous. The Israelites were chased away like sheep, and 36 men were killed. Joshua fell on his face before God, tearing his clothes. Lord, why did this happen? Why were we defeated? God's reply was cold and sharp. Stand up. Israel has sinned. Someone has stolen the things I commanded to be set apart. Someone has tried to hide God's glory in their own tent. Behind the celebration of victory lay a dark crime decreed of one man who thought he could hide from the all-seeing eye. Next time. Joshua Part 3. The defeat at Ai and the sin of Achan. The story continues. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey through the history of ancient Israel. Today, we are stepping into a chapter that is incredibly intense. It's a story full of drama, high stakes, and honestly, it's a bit of a wake-up call. We're looking at what happened right after the massive, impenetrable walls of Jericho came tumbling down. Friends, try to picture the scene. Jericho has just been completely destroyed. The dust is still hanging thick in the air, and the shouts of victory from the Israelites can be heard for miles. Imagine how those people felt. They had just witnessed an absolute miracle. Walls that were thick enough to drive chariots on top of had collapsed just from a shout and the blast of trumpets. They felt like superheroes. They felt invincible. Back at the camp, the atmosphere was electric. Soldiers were laughing and cleaning their swords. Families were hugging. And kids were running around mimicking the sound of the ram's horns. They were 100% sure that the entire land of Canaan would fall into their hands without a fight. But behind all that cheering, there was a dark secret buried deep. Something very dangerous was lurking right in the middle of them. Do you remember the warning? Before the attack on Jericho, Joshua gave a very stern command that came directly from God. He said, "Jericho is the first city, so everything in it belongs to God. It is all set apart. No one is to take anything for themselves. If you break this rule, you will bring a curse upon the entire camp of Israel." Everyone heard it. Everyone agreed. But there was one man whose eyes wouldn't stop wandering. His name was Achan. Let's step into Achan's mind for a moment. While the walls were falling and everyone was busy with the battle, Achan spotted something sparkling under the rubble of a luxury house. His eyes locked onto a beautiful robe from Babylon. It was stunning, the kind of clothing only a king would wear. Right next to it, he saw a pile of silver and a bar of solid gold. In that moment, Achan's heart wavered. The voice of greed started whispering in his ear. "Look at this, Achan. It's just going to get burned anyway. The city is huge. Thousands of people are busy. Who's going to notice if you take just a little bit? God will understand, right?" Achan looked left and right. The coast was clear. With shaking hands, he grabbed the robe and the gold, hid them under his clothes, and hurried back to his tent. He dug a hole right in the middle of his floor, buried his treasure, and covered it up. He sat there, pretending to be a loyal soldier, but he forgot that while he could hide from Joshua, he couldn't hide from the eyes of God. Meanwhile, Joshua was already planning the next move. The next target was a small place called Ai. Compared to Jericho, Ai was tiny. It was like comparing a giant to a toddler. Joshua sent some scouts to check it out, and they came back laughing. They told him, "General Joshua, don't even worry about it. Ai is so small, we don't need the whole army. Just send 2,000 or 3,000 men. It'll be a walk in the park." Joshua thought, "Yeah, that makes sense. If we took down Jericho, Ai is nothing." So about 3,000 soldiers headed up the mountain. They were overconfident. They didn't pray, they didn't ask for God's guidance, they just went, feeling like they were heading to a picnic rather than a war. But as soon as they reached the gates of Ai, the unthinkable happened. The people of Ai didn't run away. They charged out with a terrifying roar. And suddenly, the brave Israelite soldiers were hit with a wave of panic. Their courage completely melted. Instead of attacking, they turned around and ran for their lives, with the men of Ai chasing them down the slope. By the time it was over, 36 Israelite soldiers were dead. The news of this defeat hit the camp like a lightning bolt. Their confidence shattered instantly. People started crying in their tents, and a heavy fear settled over everyone. Joshua was absolutely devastated. He felt ashamed and confused. He tore his clothes, put dust on his head, and fell face down on the ground before the ark of the Lord until the sun went down. He cried out, "Oh Lord, why did this happen? Did you bring us across the Jordan just to let us be destroyed? When the rest of Canaan hears about this, they'll surround us and wipe us out." Then, in the silence of Joshua's prayer, God's voice broke through, and it was sharp. God said, "Stand up, Joshua. Why are you lying on your face? Get up. Israel has sinned. Someone has broken my covenant. Someone stole the things that were supposed to be set apart. They lied and hid it among their own stuff. That is why you can't stand against your enemies. You will keep losing until you get rid of the sin in your camp. I will not be with you anymore unless you fix this." Imagine how Joshua felt. He realized their failure wasn't because the enemy was too strong, but because there was a poison inside their own community. He knew what he had to do. The next morning, the whole nation gathered. The air was cold and tense. Joshua explained what God had said, and the process of finding the culprit began. This was a slow, terrifying process of elimination. Thousands of people stood in lines, waiting first. They drew lots by tribe. One by one, the tribes stepped forward, and the lot fell on the tribe of Judah. Achan, standing in that line, felt a cold sweat down his back. His heart was thumping like a drum. Then they narrowed it down to the clans, and it fell on the clan of the Zerahites. Achan's face turned pale. Then came the families, and it fell on the family of Zabdi. Finally, it came down to the individuals, and the name that came up was Achan. The entire nation went silent. Every eye was on him. Achan stood there with nowhere to run. Joshua walked up to him and spoke with a voice that was firm but surprisingly gentle. He said, "My son, give glory to God and tell the truth. What have you done? Don't hide it from me." Achan finally broke. He fell to his knees, sobbing. He admitted everything. "It's true. I saw a beautiful robe, some silver, and a bar of gold, and I wanted them so badly that I took them. They're buried in the ground inside my tent." Joshua sent messengers, and they found exactly what he described. It was a heartbreaking moment because of one man's greed for stuff. 36 families were grieving, and an entire nation was in danger. This was a painful lesson. Achan had to face the consequences of his actions in the valley of Achor. It was a somber day, but the sin had to be cleared so that God's presence could return. After that difficult process was over, the heavy cloud over the camp finally lifted. God spoke to Joshua again, and this time his words were full of hope. "Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Take the whole army and go up to Ai, for I have delivered the city into your hands." But this time, God gave them a specific strategy. He told them to use an ambush. Joshua chose 30,000 of his best soldiers and sent them out under the cover of night. They crept behind the hills to the west of Ai and hid there in total silence. They were told to stay alert and wait for Joshua's signal. The next morning, Joshua took the rest of the army and marched straight toward the front gate. When the king of Ai saw them coming, he laughed. "Look, they're back for more. Come on, everyone, let's finish them off." Every man in Ai rushed out to attack, leaving the city gates wide open. Joshua and his men pretended to be terrified. They turned around and started running toward the wilderness. The people of Ai were so excited that they chased them far away from their own city. The city was completely empty and unguarded. At that exact moment, God whispered to Joshua, "Hold out your spear toward the city." Joshua raised his spear high in the air. That was the signal. As soon as the soldiers hiding behind the hills saw the spear glinting in the sun, they charged out of their hiding spots. They ran into the unguarded city and immediately set it on fire. Black smoke began to billow into the sky. When the men of Ai looked back, they saw their homes going up in flames. They froze. They were trapped. And right then, Joshua's fleeing army stopped, turned around, and charged at them like lions. The soldiers who burned the city also came out from the gates to attack from behind. The army of Ai was caught in the middle, and Israel won a massive total victory. When the battle was over, the mood was different than it was after Jericho. There was no boasting this time. Instead, there was a deep sense of humility and gratitude. They had learned some very expensive lessons. They learned that a small sin isn't small if it hurts the whole community. They learned never to underestimate a challenge or rely on their own strength. And most importantly, they saw that while God is serious about justice, He is also a God of second chances. When they were honest and dealt with their mistakes, He was ready to give them a new strategy and a fresh start. The news of the victory at Ai spread throughout the land, and the other kings of Canaan were shaking in their boots. They realized the God of Israel was the real deal. But there was one group of people who realized they couldn't win with a sword. So they decided to try something else, a trick. Who were they, and would Joshua fall for a lie after just learning about the importance of truth? We will find that out in our next episode, The Deception of the Gibeonites. Until then, stay brave and keep seeking the truth. Wait a minute. Is it really possible for God's own people to get scammed? Can you actually skip a single prayer and end up making a choice that haunts you for the rest of your life? Think about it. Worn-out clothes, tattered sandals, dry. Moldy bread, it all looked like a heartbreaking story of extreme poverty. But in reality, it was a perfectly crafted piece of political theater designed to deceive the nation of Israel. After their legendary victory at Ai, Joshua and the Israelites were riding a massive wave of triumph. They felt unstoppable. But suddenly, an unexpected crisis hit them from a direction they never saw coming. It didn't happen on a battlefield. It happened in the quiet, everyday place of decision-making. Here is the most mind-blowing part. Even when we fail, even when we make foolish human errors, God is so profoundly sovereign that He can take our worst blunders and turn them into the ultimate setup for a historical miracle. Today, we are stepping into the scene where human limitation met divine intervention. The day God literally stopped the sun in the middle of the sky. Welcome to this incredible journey. After the painful defeat at Ai, the Israelites had gone through a fire. They had experienced the agony of failure because they had acted in self-confidence, but they had also tasted the sweet, radical grace of God's restoration. They finally understood something foundational. We didn't win before because we were strong. We only win when God is with us. This realization changed everything. Joshua, once a man who moved quickly, had become a man of deep, deliberate prayer. He led with a new sense of humility, knowing that one wrong move could cost thousands of lives. But Canaan was a vast, terrifying land. Jericho had fallen, Ai was in ruins, and the rumors of Israel's power were spreading like wildfire across the landscape. Have you heard? The whispers went. The God of Israel fights for them. The Jordan River stopped for them. For the Canaanite kings, this wasn't just a military threat. It was an existential terror. Their world was being turned upside down, and their belief systems were being shattered by the presence of a God who actually entered into human history. In response, the kings of Canaan did what any desperate power would do. They formed a massive, unprecedented coalition. They realized that their individual armies were nothing compared to the power of the living God. But while these kings were busy sharpening their swords and gathering chariots, the people of Gibeon, a major, fortified city, saw the writing on the wall. They were incredibly shrewd. They knew that military might wouldn't save them. They decided to play the ultimate game of deception. They realized, we've heard the stories. Fighting against them is a suicide mission. If we want our families to survive, we have one option. We have to trick them into a peace treaty. They didn't just want to hide. They wanted a legal contract that would guarantee their survival. The Gibeonites began to prepare their theater. They needed to look like they had traveled from the ends of the earth. They took old, patched-up clothes, found shoes that were falling apart, and packed bags with dry, crumbling bread that looked like it had been sitting in the sun for months. A few days later, they appeared at the Israeli camp at Gilgal. They were dirty, exhausted, and they played the part of weary travelers to perfection. When the Israeli guards confronted them, they didn't act like warriors. They acted like refugees. "Who are you?" the Israelites asked. And the Gibeonites replied with carefully rehearsed humility, "We are a delegation from a very distant country. We heard of the amazing things your God did in Egypt, and we traveled this far just to show our respect. Please make a covenant of peace with us." Joshua and the leaders were cautious. They looked at the moldy bread. They touched the worn-out sandals, and they asked the hard questions. Are you sure you're from far away? What if you're our neighbors trying to scam us? But the Gibeonites held out that crumbling bread like it was a sacred artifact. Look at this. When we left home, this bread was hot from the oven. Now it's like stone. It was so perfect, so tangible, and so convincing. Joshua and his leaders felt a sense of pity. They wanted to show mercy. But then, the Bible hits us with the most chilling sentence in the entire book of Joshua. They sampled their provisions but did not inquire of the Lord. They skipped the most important step. They relied on their own eyes, their own limited logic, and their own past experiences. They didn't stop to pray. They didn't ask God for discernment. Joshua signed the peace treaty in the name of the Lord. 3 days later, the truth shattered their illusions. The Israelite army discovered that Gibeon was just over the hill. The people were furious. They tricked us. Let's attack them. But Joshua stood firm, even though he had been played. No, we have sworn an oath to them by the Lord. We cannot touch them now. A promise made in the name of the Lord must be kept. Joshua admitted his error, but he refused to cover it with a deeper, more treacherous sin. He held them accountable, making them servants to the house of God. But he maintained his integrity. The real crisis wasn't the lie. It was what the lie triggered. When the king of Jerusalem heard that Gibeon, a major city, had surrendered to Israel, he panicked. He gathered 4 other Amorite kings, and they formed a massive, vengeful coalition. They marched on Gibeon to punish them for their betrayal. The Gibeonites were terrified. They sent a desperate message to Joshua: "Do not abandon your servants. Come up and save us." Look at the irony. Israel was now dragged into a war they didn't want to save people who had lied to them. All because of a prayer they had failed to pray. But Joshua was a man of radical honor. He mobilized his army immediately, and God reassured him, "Do not be afraid. I have given them into your hand." Joshua and his men marched all night, a grueling climb through the darkness, pushing their human bodies beyond the breaking point. They weren't just fighting for Gibeon. They were fighting for the integrity of their own word before God. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, Joshua caught the coalition completely by surprise. It was a tactical masterpiece born out of pure obedience. The Israelite army poured down the mountain slopes, and the enemy forces were thrown into total chaos. It was more than a military victory, it was a divine judgment. As the enemies turned to run, the sky itself darkened with the wrath of God. Lethal hailstones rained down from heaven. It wasn't natural. It was supernatural. More enemies died from the hail than from the swords of the Israelites. Yet the battle was massive. The terrain was rugged. The afternoon was fading, and the shadows were getting long. Joshua knew that if the sun went down, the remaining armies would vanish into the deep. Jagged ravines, the thick forests, and the hidden caves of the hill country to regroup and fight another day. In that high-stakes moment, something shifted in Joshua. A fierce, radical faith burned within him. He didn't just want a partial victory. He wanted total completion. Standing there, on the brink of history, he lifted his hands and cried out with a voice of command that shook the very foundations of the earth. "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ajalon." And the impossible happened. The universe obeyed. The blazing sun ground to a dead halt in the middle of the sky. The moon stood still over Ajalon. For 1 hour, 2, 3 time itself seemed to hang in the balance. The shadows didn't move. The golden light held its place, a spotlight on the battlefield of destiny. The Lord was listening to the voice of a man. Why? Because that man was walking in total surrender to his will. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. With that extended day of supernatural light, the army secured a total historic triumph. When the sun finally sank, the camp was filled with an overwhelming sense of awe. They realized that their human blunder, the mistake of not praying, had become the very trigger for God's greatest public display of power. God didn't abandon them in their mistake. He used it to draw all 5 enemy kings into one spot to be conquered at once. He turned a mess into a mission. This isn't just an ancient story. It's a mirror for our own lives. We all face Gibeonite situations that look right, feel right, and sound right, but need the filter of prayer. What happens next as the northern nations realize that even the sun and moon fight for this new people? We'll find out in our next episode. Until then, remember, never trust your eyes alone. Always inquire of the Lord. And even when you stumble, keep your integrity. For God is waiting to turn your biggest mistakes into your greatest testimonies. Stay courageous, keep praying, and keep seeking the truth. See you next time. Imagine this, a massive army as numerous as the sand on the seashore, advancing with thousands of iron chariots that shake the very earth. After the miraculous fall of Jericho and that mind-blowing moment when the sun stood still, Israel was now facing the most terrifying challenge in their history. This was the most powerful coalition of forces ever gathered in Canaan. But right at the peak of the tension, God gives a command that makes absolutely no sense to human logic. Burn all their chariots. Why on earth would you destroy such powerful weapons? Well, today, we're stepping into the final battle, a moment where faith is tested through total obedience. After the news of Jericho's collapse and the miracle at Gibeon spread, all of Canaan was in a panic. Did you hear? Jericho is gone. They say their leader just shouted and the sun stopped in the sky. Their God is literally fighting for them. That fear spread everywhere, especially among the kings in the north. They knew that if they just sat around, they'd be finished. Jabin, the king of Hazor, the strongest city in the north, finally rallied the other kings. They combined all their forces from the mountains, the valleys, and the coast. Their numbers were staggering, and their iron chariots were countless. For the Israelites, who were used to fighting with simple gear, this wasn't just another battle, it was a monster ready to crush them. Fear began to creep into the hearts of the people. This is too much, they probably thought. But in the middle of that panic, God came to Joshua. His voice was short, but it echoed with power. Do not be afraid of them. By this time tomorrow, I will hand all of them over to Israel, slain. Then God gave that strange command. You are to hamstring their horses and burn their chariots. Think about it. As a commander, Joshua knew those iron chariots could be valuable assets for Israel. But God said, burn them. Why? Because God didn't want them to rely on high-tech weapons. He wanted them to rely on Him alone. Joshua, with incredible faith, chose to obey. He didn't use military logic. He used faith. It was a radical step, choosing the unseen hand of God over the very visible, very deadly machines of war. Joshua led his troops at lightning speed. They launched a surprise attack near the waters of Merom. The northern armies, feeling invincible, never dreamed Israel would have the guts to strike that fast. That morning, as fog still covered the valley, Joshua's shout pierced the silence. The Lord is with us. Attack. The world turned upside down. The Israeli troops charged like lions. In the chaos of the battle, the iron chariots they were so proud of became traps. Everything fell apart. Israel chased them down, and just as God commanded, Joshua hamstrung the horses and burned the chariots. As the fires consumed those war machines, Israel witnessed something that changed them forever. We didn't win because of our weapons. We won because God fought for us. They learned the lesson that many of us struggle with today. Human security is a fragile illusion when compared to the absolute power of the Creator. After that, Joshua moved to Hazor, the heart of northern power. The city that was thought to be unconquerable was finally leveled to the ground. With the fall of Hazor, the great wars in Canaan came to an end. Suddenly, it was quiet. After living in constant tension, war, and tears for so long, there was finally peace. The land had rest from war. No more screams of terror. No more children running for their lives. Mothers could cook in peace, and families could sleep safely in their tents. It was the end of a long, bloody, and exhausting chapter, but the journey wasn't over. Israel now faced an even bigger challenge. How do they divide this land fairly? And more importantly, how do they keep their faith in a land full of new temptations? We have to remember, the most dangerous enemy wasn't on the battlefield. It was in their own hearts, the temptation to forget God's goodness and settle into complacency. Time passed. Joshua, once a mighty warrior, now had hair as white as snow. At the end of his life, he gathered all of Israel. He looked at the faces of the people who had fought alongside him for decades. He looked at a new generation that hadn't seen the miracles at the Jordan River. He realized that the greatest battles weren't the ones fought with swords, but the ones fought for the soul of the nation, with a voice full of authority yet gentle. He gave his legendary final message: "Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." That was the final decision. They weren't called to lift swords anymore. They were called to make a choice. Would they remain faithful, or would they get lost in the comforts of the world? Joshua knew that after the war, the temptations would be even greater. Money, power, and the influence of the culture around them could quickly erode their faith if they weren't careful. He challenged them to look at the past, acknowledge God's faithfulness, and then commit to the future. Friends, the story of Joshua reminds us that often. Our biggest challenges don't come from the outside. They come from our own hearts. Are you still willing to rely on your chariots, your own strength, or are you brave enough to burn them all and surrender completely to God? Life struggles can be exhausting. You might be facing your own personal battle today, problems at work, in your family, or a crisis of faith. But remember, if God could win the war in Canaan, He can win the battle in your heart today. He isn't asking for your weapons. He is asking for your trust. Like Joshua, we are called to finish the race faithfully. The choice is in our hands today. Will we be a generation that holds on to the legacy of faith, or will we let it fade because we're too busy chasing our own worldly iron chariots? Thank you for following Joshua's journey from the beginning to this point. This is the end of the chapter on conquest, but it's the beginning of the chapter on keeping the faith. That legacy is now in our hands. What will we do with it? Will we choose to serve the one who brought us through the wilderness, or will we wander off into the comforts of a life without Him? See you in the final episode, The Last Choice, The Legacy of Faith. Stay strong, never let go of your faith, and I'll see you in the next story. The era of monumental conquest. A time when humanity, backed by the raw power of God, actually saw the sun stand still in the sky to finish the battle, finally reached its glorious conclusion. The bloody wars that tested every ounce of courage and resilience have ended, and the season of long-awaited peace has finally arrived. For the people of Israel, they no longer need the sharp edge of a sword, the deadly weight of a spear, or the heavy armor of war. What they need now is a map, a guide to divide the vast, beautiful land of promise. Today, we witness the unwavering faith of Caleb, an 85-year-old veteran who refused to take the easy path, and the final, heart-wrenching choice of Joshua at the age of 110. This is the grand finale of Joshua's history, and it is packed with lessons that resonate deeply even today. Let's embark on this historic journey with open hearts. The great wars against the Northern Coalition have ended in absolute victory for the people of God. The terrifying sound of iron chariots and the screams of fear behind the city walls have finally gone silent. The land of Canaan is now calm and hopeful for the next generation. Israel, who lived as nomads in the harsh wilderness for decades, is finally putting down roots in the land God promised, a land flowing with milk and honey. But the task ahead isn't about military might. It's about justice, faithfulness, and obedience. Through the casting of lots, God divides the territory among the tribes with perfect fairness. Some tribes receive vast, fertile plains for farming. Others get beautiful hills filled with olive trees or lush green pastures perfect for their flocks. As they claim their inheritance, many Israelites weep with joy, kissing the ground and shouting, "This is our home. This is the land God promised our ancestors." It is a moment of true freedom. Yet, amidst this celebration, an old man approaches with incredible dignity. His stride is steady, and his eyes are as sharp as they were decades ago. This is Caleb. At 85, his body might be aging, but his spirit is identical to the man who first scouted Canaan 45 years earlier. "Joshua," he says, with a voice that stirs the soul, "remember the promise the Lord made to us at Kadesh Barnea?" Only Joshua and Caleb survived from the generation that rebelled against God. Caleb makes a startling request: Hebron. Hebron was the toughest stronghold, home to the Anakites, giants who terrified everyone else. While others his age seek retirement and safety, Caleb chooses the biggest challenge to honor God's promise. With incredible faith, he conquers Hebron. Caleb proves to us that age is just a number when you hold on to God's promises with unshakable faith. Caleb's example teaches us that passion for God's will knows no retirement. During this process, God also establishes an extraordinary system of justice: the Cities of Refuge. 6 cities are set aside as sanctuaries for those who commit accidental manslaughter, preventing endless cycles of blood feuds between kin. God balances perfect justice with profound mercy. Additionally, the tribe of Levi receives no land because God declares himself their inheritance. They are scattered across 48 cities to serve as spiritual guardians, teachers of the law and guides for every tribe. This is God's way of ensuring that every corner of Israel is reminded of his presence. However, the new peace is briefly shaken. The tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh build a massively magnificent altar by the Jordan River before returning to the east. The tribes in the west panic and grow furious. They're betraying us. They've built a rival altar against God's command. A terrible civil war nearly breaks out. But before swords are drawn and blood is spilled, leaders come to ask the truth. The answer is moving. The altar isn't for sacrifice or idolatry. It is merely a witness to ensure their descendants aren't forgotten by the others. It proves they are one people serving the same God. The misunderstanding ends in tears of joy and restored brotherhood. It reminds us that honest communication can prevent destruction. Time flies. And finally, Joshua reaches the end of his long life. At 110, he gathers all the leaders, elders, and judges of Israel at Shechem for his most precious final message. His voice may tremble with exhaustion, but every word cuts straight to the heart. Remember everything God has done for you. He pleads with deep gratitude. Never compromise with the idols around you. Don't let the world's influence erode your faith, not even a little bit. Remember how God provided for you in the wilderness? Then, Joshua delivers the most famous, challenging ultimatum in the entire Bible. If serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Hearing this bold challenge, the entire nation answers in one voice, "We will serve the Lord, for He is our God." Joshua then sets up a large stone under the oak tree as a silent witness to their solemn vow. Shortly after, the legend of faith closes his eyes in peace and goes home to the Father in heaven. A magnificent era has simply come to an end. The generation that saw with their own eyes the miracle of the sea parting, the Jordan crossing, and the walls of Jericho falling is now gone. But the Bible records one of the saddest sentences in human history. After that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what He had done for Israel. A generation that didn't inherit faith, that didn't experience God personally, began to drift away in the rushing current of the world. This is the beginning of Israel's dark age, the period we know as the Book of Judges. War after war, fall after fall, is about to begin because they forgot God. This serves as a stark warning to us, friends. This is a serious and heavy warning for us today. Faith is not an inheritance that transfers automatically. We cannot simply rely on our parents' faith or someone else's spiritual experience. Each generation must choose for themselves before God. Whom will we serve? Will we remain faithful amidst the world's temptations, or will we let faith fade away like the generation that did not know the Lord? Our engagement with God's Word must be personal. We are called to know God not just through someone else's stories, but through a real, daily relationship. Reflect again on the long journey of Israel from slavery to the Promised Land. So many obstacles they faced, yet God's steadfast love remained constant. When they were obedient, God's blessings overflowed. When they turned away, correction came as a loving father's discipline. The great lesson from Joshua's story is that true success isn't about how much wealth we have, but how faithfully we maintain our relationship with God until the very end. Are we building an altar in our hearts every day? Or are we letting modern idols like ambition, comfort, and excessive self-confidence displace God in our lives? Follow the journey of history, filled with tears and God's unchanging love. In the next series, the Book of Judges, the generation that did not know the Lord. This will be a crucial reminder for all of us to guard our legacy of faith. Until we meet in the next story, keep your faith strong and never forget God's love in your life. Thank you for faithfully accompanying this historic journey to the end, and continue to be a light to those around you. May the unwavering faith of Caleb and the bold decision of Joshua be a part of our lives every single day. Never give up in your struggle of faith, because the God who is with Joshua is the same God who is with us today. See you in the next episode, and let us continue to walk with God in every step of our lives.